Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Stock Talk. Hope everyone is having a good end of summer. We're rolling into fall. Once again, it's a challenging time, and people aren't really that interested in the markets, but we want to make sure that we are keeping up to date on a lot of mining news. And there really is a lot happening, even though, the market itself, the junior mining especially is, it's dried up. It's pretty tough right now. There is a lot happening. So I don't want people to feel like things are just totally stagnant or not moving forward, anything of that nature. Now, the first one I want to start off with is something in Arizona, because I know lots of people have heard me talking about Arizona before in regard to Desert Mountain, and that's hit a bit of a hiccup. The small town of Yuma, there's a company called Evolution Energy, and they are building the only cobalt processing facility in North America. So construction is expected to be completed by 2025 or 2026. It's also, like Desert Mountain, is going to be run with, solar power, recycled water. They're taking a very green approach. It's interesting because you see obviously there's issues happening in Arizona for Desert Mountain. We don't know for sure what that is. They've moved out of there, but at the same time, there's this willingness to want to do cobalt recycling. Now, 70% of cobalt comes from the Congo, but this is a big step for the US as they try to build some sort of system that will support their green initiative.
Yeah, it's a good step in the right direction for the U.S. because, like you mentioned, when you think about cobalt, your thought doesn't go even to North America, right? Like you kind of think Africa, and you really think kind of some of the worst mining practices typically get associated with cobalt mining. So it's a point that we hammer on a lot, but it's important to see the steps being made to doing that at home, doing that in the West where you can control it better, where you can have better safeguards in place. And obviously then, bringing that supply home, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but, there's better places you can spend money than perhaps over in Africa if you really want to get bang for your buck. And doing that in the States is always a positive move.
Yeah, and I kind of throw out there to people sometimes on social media that they say, well, all this cobalt comes from the DRC. Say, okay, well, Apple is very much aware of that. Tesla is very much aware of that. They're not stopping, though. Like these big woke companies, they're not stopping from there, and they could invest in companies looking for cobalt in North America. No problem. It's closer to home. Would it be a bit more expensive? Yep. So, once again, it's a very nuanced situation because the companies that are pretending to be ESG, that are very woke as far as that goes, also are just businesses, and they're more than happy to keep on continuing business as business. So it's a tricky conversation.
Yeah, so kind of following along that point of keeping things, at home, there's a couple of encouraging sort of developments we've seen. Rio Tinto's chief executive, Jakob Stausholm, has come out and said that they're a British Australian mining kind of giant. They're very, very big company, but they're going to be making more investments in Canada. Now, he's ruling out taking a run into Canada's Teck Resources, but they are going to make more investments into Canada. And another company, Sumitomo Metals Mining, is investing almost 17 million into Canada, and their battery metals firm Nano One. So Nano One is part of a Japanese giant. They're going to be looking for substantial methods to produce lithium-ion batteries. Obviously, we've talked about lithium-ion batteries on the show a lot before. We know that Canada can step up to help kind of meet the global need for that. So 17 million being invested into Canadian mining is another step in a positive direction. And off the back of that, I know you talked about it last week with their CEO, John Papasquale, but First Phosphate's new MOU with American Battery Factory as well. 40,000 tons annual of LFP cathode. That's valued anywhere between $500 million to $1 billion. So really positive investment on that front as well.
Lots happening, not being appreciated in the market. And I get it. It's a tough market. Interest rates are high. Inflation's through the roof. People are worried about their homes, real estate, and what those numbers are going to come back when they renew their mortgages. But it's great to see a lot of this because it ties in a lot of stories we've been talking about. One being the U.S. investing in projects. So there's 20 million awarded to a mine in Minnesota, Talon Metals. So that's a good start to see that they've given them 20 million to mine in there. But at the same time, it's a mixed message because the U.S. Forest Service put a 20-year ban on a project that's ready to go. Nickel and copper, both exceptionally needed for supply chain for the entire green revolution. They've kind of squashed that. So it's mixed messages coming from this administration. They went against Trump, who wanted that project to go forward for obvious reasons. So it's tough to see. You've killed one that could have been supplying massive amounts of nickel and copper, but you've given 20 million to a small company to kind of to look around for stuff, which is a mixed message to say the least. And Rio Tinto is also in the news because their CEO had mentioned, Canada's light years ahead or decades ahead on the ESG front than any other country, which is true. But also, this current government has pretty much been, anti-business for quite some time, except that they gave billions to Volkswagen of our dollars, taxpayers' dollars, to build a battery plant. Taxpayers giving billions of dollars. Now, granted, that's not just cash; it's in tax savings and tax deferral and everything whatnot. But they could have easily taken the same approach that the U.S. had taken and really harnessed mining, which is, we're a resource country, to give grants to all these mining companies to secure supply chain and be literally a world leader, not only in the way we go about mining, because we are ESG friendly, but to actually open up that we're open for business. So just a thought that I had in regards to that, but it's good to see that major miners are looking to Canada. My thought would be if we can get someone in there, liberal or conservative, that actually realizes what an opportunity Canada has, that would be fantastic for the country in whole, and would actually give a real plan rather than kind of virtue signaling a couple battery plants. Is that we're actually behind this in a substantial way with partners like the U.S.
Yeah, and like that critical kind of investment is going to be necessary, and it would be really encouraging to see it happen beyond just the big players, right? Like if you can get some actual investment going into these smaller mining companies. Another point I'll make, just on what you were talking about the U.S. and how it's a bit mixed messaging that's being threaded through. I would wonder, and I'd actually be pretty confident in this, of how much of this is the fact that we're moving into another election cycle in the US. They're going to have an election in the fall of 2024. And if you look at, the different states where in some places things are being approved or in some places things are not being approved, it tends to kind of fall along the line of, okay, this is going to play well in this region if we shut it down because, energy and it's all bad. Oil and gas mining is all bad. And they're kind of playing to that crowd in those states, while in other states letting it go and trying to look like, hey, no, see, we are backing investment here. So I would suspect, and I again, like I said, I'd be pretty confident in saying there's a large amount of this that is just election tactics already playing out by the part of the U.S. federal government as well. And that's something people are going to have to be alert to as we, there's nothing more important in U.S. political kind of systems than these presidential elections and laying out control for the next 4 years. So everything's kind of being done with that as the backdrop now as we move into 2024.
And those are the more interesting political strategies that get played that you don't hear anything about. We hear about the absurdity of like the far left, like the absolute ridiculous stuff that people have a hard time getting their head wrapped around. But this does work in that someone might approve a major project for someone, the governor of XYZ state, while squashing another one as retribution kind of thing for something. That this happens in politics all the time. So it's nothing new or strange or out of the blue. And it does make sense that coming into a very troubling election year, there will be all sorts of those games being played. And some of the projects we've looked at, it kind of seems like, I wonder if politics played a huge role in this. And it's definitely possible. And we could look into it a bit more depth, but kind of the gut says, yes, for sure.
Yeah, it does seem to be that sort of situation. And then again, on the mixed messaging point, if you want to, we can talk about the U.S. Undersecretary for Economic Growth coming out and saying that this isn't about China. We're perfectly happy to work with China. When the messaging coming out of both the U.S. and Canadian administrations just a few months ago was, we're going to have to take back control from China. So Is that a realization of like, we can't actually take back control from China? We're going to have to play ball, which I suspect it is. Or is there other kind of moves that play with this? But it's, they're going to do it all under the guise about, well, we have to diversify. And of course, we know we have to diversify the different streams. But are you going to play hardball with China, or are you not going to play hardball with China? The flip flopping back and forth is frustrating, but also fascinating.
They can't play hardball. They have no positioning. That's what's so frustrating about this, is that 10 years ago, there was plenty of people in mining talking about positioning themselves, whether it's with lithium or whatever resource you want, copper, but no one would listen. So this is the frustration, is that they've just decided that they're going in this direction and they don't know what to do now. And they are realizing now that they're over a barrel. They can't decouple from China. So even though they're talking hard at them, and they should, I mean, I would say you want to have a complete system outside of China. That also ups the ante of, bad relations, bad diplomacy, which are already rocky enough. So he's come out and said the obvious, that, we want to focus on them because they're a good, strong trading partner. And yeah, always having trade is a good way to calm things down a bit. But make no mistake, you don't want to be relying on them. We've seen throughout history what happens if someone has a monopoly on energy, and that's what this is. Metals are energy for this green movement. So it's a political stance they took, but they need to really start moving if they plan on going all in on this kind of green thing, which you can't. I mean, you can't. They have to be on firing on all cylinders, Canada included, trying to find all of these metals and minerals. And on that note, a big one, cobalt metals, which we talk about quite a bit. Now that you'll remember, this is backed by a lot of big names. So if you're wondering, are these people involved and why don't we hear about it? Well, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they're putting money into cobalt metals along with the Virgin Group. So that's Richard Branson and Bridgewater Associates Ray Dalio, who I've got tons of respect for. He is retired, but it's his old hedge fund. So they're putting 150 million into Zambia, and they've got a project there. That's a lot of money. You'd kind of mentioned, and we're going to get into one final topic here too, is that, Africa has a ton of resources, but I think it goes without saying, it comes with potentially a lot of issues, a lot of problems. Not only, take DRC, which is an extreme situation. Politics can change very quickly there. They can nationalize mines. They have done it before. There's warlords that rise up, come down. It's a very challenging place to look for metals and mining. You'd think that you'd want to go, especially if you're taking the approach that you're ESG friendly. Why wouldn't you be spending that money in Canada and saying, let's look entirely in Canada. Let's really try to focus and spend some money in the ground. They want to diversify as well. So, but it's just to think, if they're putting 150 million into Zambia, how much money that they have at their beck and call to look for things.
Yeah, because it almost sort of seems like something that you're doing this as taking a flyer or something like that in this kind of situation. And 150 million is no small chunk of change. It's nothing to laugh at. So it's very interesting. And again, to see a group that's backed by all of those people making that kind of move is obviously worth paying attention to. And I know the last kind of topic that we've kind of had a lot of stuff in here, but it's all under the same theme. The last one we wanted to touch on, and this is something, Andrew, that we could do an entire show on, honestly, talking about deep sea mining and how it could help resolve sort of the global minerals shortage and situation. But it's a big issue. It's a lot to bite through. So I'll just get your kind of very surface level thoughts. And if people are interested in this topic, I think it's something we could dive into a lot further, both in another video and on our site for paid subscribers as well. But just your general thoughts on deep sea mining, where you think it could go. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are your thoughts?
Okay, let's keep it very macro. A lot of people will say most of the, say for gold mines, most of the easy stuff is being picked around. They've already found it. They know there's quite a bit under the water there. There's no doubt about it. There's amazing resources underwater. The cost of mining underwater, you can imagine, is exceptional. You avoid some environmental issues by going underwater, but then opening up a whole host of other ones by going deep sea, like 4 kilometers underground. So I think it's very interesting, and I think we'll leave it at that. It's super challenging. And there is a company, the metals company, they're focused on that. And they're not wrong. There could be like billions of dollars worth of critical metals down there. But it kind of, at the same time, it kind of floats around that world of let's mine asteroids. Like, sounds great, super expensive, kind of a movie. But let's see what they could do. There's a lot of cost to it. And I would say there's a lot of projects right now that are very interesting, very accessible in Canada that someone could look at. And instead of saying, I want complete control of it to make all the money, you could be a JV partner. You could try to advance it. There's other things that could be done. But listen, like I said, it's a whole show on itself.
We'll need to get Bruce Willis and his team of oil drillers from that Armageddon from that movie. We'll have to get them down there to dial it. They're the best team in the world. They're the only ones who could do it. They had to send them into space to save the world,
That's
Andrew.
true.
So now we're going to send them to the bottom of the ocean. But it's one final point on that would be, if you think there's uproar about doing whether it's mining or oil and gas projects in like wetlands or protected nature areas like that, if you think there's noise around that from kind of climate activist groups or environmental groups, the amount of impact that could be done to the biological, and I think this is probably a valid argument, the natural kind of essential habitats underwater from mining, I'm sure the impact wouldn't be minimal there. So you'd be hearing a lot of that too. So it'd be tough to get everyone sort of on side for that sort of thing. But a really, really interesting topic though, that I'm sure we will dive more into. See what I did there? Dive in the not too distant future.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. It's good to see everyone. Leave a comment. Send us a message with which one you'd like to see. Maybe a Zoom call with us where it's just behind the subscription. We look forward to chatting with you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, everybody.